We're now joined by Shawn Parker, the new Hornets PA announcer, joining the Charlotte Hornets for the 24-25 season. Shawn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, James. It's a pleasure. I'm just glad to be here.
I guess, look, this will be the first time a lot of Hornets fans will have heard from you. This podcast, we're recording this on a Thursday, but it's actually going to come out on a Tuesday. So by this point, the people listening to this, you will have done your first home game, which will be very exciting, I'm sure. I guess, could you tell fans a little bit about yourself? A little bit behind, I guess, the PR announcement. We know you used to work for the Minnesota Timberwolves, but tell people about Shawn Parker outside of the CV. You know, where are you from?
Sure.
Did you find yourself supporting an NBA team? What are your college teams? Give people the info they really want to know here.
Sure thing. So I am just like Big Pat. I'm a Maryland native. I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. Because of that, I am a D.C. everything fan. So Wizards, Capitals, grew up a Redskins fan, now a Commanders fan. And by the way, I am completely okay with the name, even though I want them to change it again. But for now, it's fine. And I actually grew up an Orioles fan because when I was growing up, we didn't have the Nationals. So I grew up an Orioles fan. College team, went to the University of Maryland. So I'm a University of Maryland guy. And I got into sports. Actually, I was, when I was in elementary school, I got into television production, talking in class, running my mouth. Teacher wanted to get me out of the way. So he sent me down to the closed circuit TV, where I started reading newscasts and got the bug for it. This was in second grade. And just decided that I wanted to do something behind the microphone for my whole life. So went to high school to studied it in college, got away from it for a while, did some other things in other industries. About 12 years ago, I got back into sports doing PA announcing. Started out at George Washington University and the DC Divas, the women's pro football team in DC, the oldest women's pro football team in the country, by the way. After being at GW, I decided to audition on the pro side to see where my skills were, to see where I matched up against other people. So went to Minnesota. They had their PA announcer position open. I auditioned for it. 3 rounds and 400 people later, they picked me. And it was a heady experience. It was a whirlwind experience, one that I absolutely loved and treasured. And it prepared me for this process because before I had 3.5 weeks from the time they offered me the position to move to Minnesota, this time it was 9 days. So I had to have all of my ducks in a row getting from Nashville, where we were living, to Charlotte. But I'm here in one piece, sitting here with you all, and it obviously worked.
What about PA announcing draws you to it and makes you want to pursue it further? Again, do you have any inspirations in the field as well?
I tell you, for me, it's the interaction. And it's not a direct interaction during the game, but it's the interaction with the fans. It is being part of the game experience. I like to tell people that, I'm kind of like the umpire or the referee, in that if at the end of the game, if you don't remember me, I did a good job. But at the same time, and during high spots, during those big moments, I want to be there to help you get there. When Brandon Miller comes down with just a nasty tomahawk dunk like he did last night, you want to be there with the fans and engage with them in that moment. At the same time, you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb if you say something that is obviously like, huh? what's going on, which I have done before.
Can you give us an example of one of those moments?
You know what? I absolutely will. And the one that I was thinking about, it was during COVID. So it was during COVID when everything was shut down, and we were doing a game, and it was just, like the front office staff and everybody. And it was actually our first game in Target Center where fans were returning. And we had about 200 or 300 first responders and medical people that were in the arena, and we were honoring them and celebrating them. So I was sitting there during one of the timeouts, and I was talking to the official scorer, and we were talking about Big Ten stuff. Maryland's in the Big Ten. We were talking about Big Ten stuff, Maryland, Minnesota, blah, blah, blah. So then we come back to do this read, and I'm doing this read, and I'm thanking the first responders and whatnot from Minnesota. And I get to the end of my read, and I'm like, from the Minnesota Timberwolves and the state of Maryland, thanks you. And I'm like, oh my God, I just said the state of Maryland in Minnesota. And so my boss was sitting down from me, kind of looked over at me, and I'm like, sorry. And then I turn around and I see sitting across the arena from me was the then president of basketball operations, Gerson Rosas. And Gerson looks at me like, what was that? And I'm like, I'm sorry. And he just kind of chuckled and gave me a thumbs up. So those things happen. I had one of my bosses when I got that job told me, Shawn, as long as you don't drop an F-bomb on the mic, you can keep your job. I'm like, okay, well, that's good to know. But so it does allow for being human, and those things happen. You just kind of have to go with the flow and then just concentrate and make sure you get it right next time.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes some of those moments, those are the ones you remember, right? Those are the funny moments for fans, and sometimes they can like cut through. So they can be good as well. They really are.
And sometimes you can roll with it, right? Because like Charlotte FC, the MLS team, opening night, 74,000 plus people there. During the anthem, mic cuts out. You get like 6 words into the anthem. And now it's a tradition. Someone comes in, they start it, and the crowd finishes the song. It could become a thing. If one mistake can be a tradition, you never know.
Well, you know what? It's ironic that you said that, because that has actually happened to me twice, where I have been playing the net, because when you're on a certain level, you're not only doing PA, you're also doing the audio and whatnot. So I was playing the national anthem. This happened twice. One time, the anthem cut out like in the first 5 seconds. The second time, it wouldn't play at all. Everybody is standing, hand over their heart. They're waiting. So I started singing. I was the one that performed the anthem. And I had both times the GM came up to me and was like, man, that was awesome. We got to get you to do this every time. I'm like, nope. That's an emergency situation only. I mean, I can carry the tune. I can do all right for myself. But yeah. And don't give anybody the idea I'm not doing that at Spectrum Center either. So.
Shawn, obviously your first home game that you're going to be PA announcer for, there also going to be a special ceremony towards Big Pat, who obviously sadly passed away after a number of years of service to the Hornets organization after a long battle with illness. Can you just talk a little bit about kind of your relationship with Big Pat? We were speaking before the podcast. You mentioned you'd had some interactions with him, and also just the kind of I want to call it a celebration of that night, of Big Pat's time in Charlotte, because he was really beloved and known by fans.
Yeah, I got to know Big Pat with being NBA PA announcer. It's a brotherhood. There are only 30 of us, and so many of us, exchange texts, emails, phone conversations, and I was fortunate enough. In my 5 years in Minnesota, to have several interactions. I never got to meet him in person, which is something that I do regret. But I did have a number of phone conversations and exchange messages with him. Wonderful person. always supportive. I considered him to be a mentor of mine. Also being from Maryland as well, I looked up to him as like a PA big brother. So I am really looking forward to the celebration of his life, of his career. It's one of the things that, I was asked by the Hornets coming in, because they wanted someone that understood the legacy that Big Pat left, and wanted to make sure that whomever succeeded him would be able to handle things. And I think that I truly do understand what he meant to the community, what he meant to the fans. And I've been telling people, I'm not trying to replace him at all. I am just trying to come in and honor his legacy with what I do. And I understand coming in that, there'll be some fans that immediately won't like me. And I understand that. Pat had his style. I have my style. There are going to be similarities. There are going to be differences. I just ask that, hey, stick with me. Eventually, you will come to appreciate the passion that I have for the game, the passion that I convey. I tell people all the time, I can't jump up and cheer at the table like they do in the stands. But what I can do is I can cheer with my voice, with my inflection, with the way that I can play with things. I like to tell people that I let people know how I feel about a particular call by the way that I announce it. So, let's say, for example, that I'm going to pick on Taj Gibson because he was in Minnesota when I was there.
Yeah.
So let's say Taj Gibson is called for a personal foul that might be a little bit questionable. It's like, oh, that really wasn't a foul. I'm a fan. I'm not going to think that's a foul either. So when it comes across, it's going to be personal foul on 67 Taj Gibson, his first, team's second. You're going to be like, okay, well, he's kind of not digging that call either. So, and that's the feeling that I want fans to feel, is that, hey, that disembodied voice, he's with me too. And I also want them to know that I'm not disembodied. I'm right there at the table. If they see me in the arena, if they're down there, come down, say hello. You see me at if you see me at Food Lion or something like that, come up, say hi. I want to meet everybody. I want to know how they feel about Charlotte Hornets basketball. And, hey, if they have a tip for me, I'm not going to not listen, because who knows? It might be something that will help me out.
I really appreciate you said that. Sorry to jump in, but
yeah,
the new ownership has kind of had the same approach, been really fan friendly and approachable. And I think it's really great that you echo it, and that could be a running theme with this organization.
Absolutely. When you're, I think that people have to understand that, professional sports teams, while they are owned by, individual owners, ownership groups, what have you, it's a trust. It is a sacred trust of the people of that community. They have invested time, money, in some cases, blood, sweat, and tears toward their team. I know I told you all before the podcast, I think I said in the podcast that, I'm a DC everything fan. So I am, I grew up a Redskins fan. I cried when they lost the Super Bowl to the Raiders. I sat there, that hurt, so it's a trust. So I understand, that the fans, they're invested. They want to be entertained. They want their team to win, and they have opinions on how things should go. And the people that are in positions of power, they shouldn't shut those voices out, because those are the voices at the end of the day that improve the bottom line, that help the business go. And I believe that Rick and Gabe understand that, and that they are committed to making this a championship franchise. They've already, they've invested money in Spectrum Center with the new state-of-the-art facility that is in the works. So it's one of those things that, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I believe that all the boats that are associated with the Charlotte Hornets are going to rise, and that this is going to be one of the premier franchises in the league.
Yeah. Shawn, when I was doing my research ahead of this podcast, I found out that wearing a bow tie became your thing in Minnesota.
It was.
I want to ask, is that carrying over to Charlotte? And if so, have you picked out a purple and teal one?
It already has. I called the preseason game against the Knicks, and I was proudly wearing a teal bow tie.
There we go. That's what the people wanted to hear.
Yep, teal bow tie and pocket square were worn against the Knicks opening night. I've got a purple one and purple bow tie, purple pocket square, purple shoes. I'm ready.
Nice.
Love it. Good to hear.
Yep, I always say when you see the bow time, it's showtime, and that's what it is.
I love it. That goes into something I want to ask you about. Bars.
Yeah.
Do you rhymes, puns, whatever you want to call it? What's your process? Do you vet them through somebody else? Do you just throw it out there, see how it feels? If it sticks, you run with it. What's your process there?
Yeah, I will sit down before the season. I go through the roster, and I look at things like where they went to school. Can I incorporate the school in it? So Roll Tide, or something like that. The Tennessee Vol, Rocky Top. Looking at those things. What's the height? With Taj Gibson, 6'9", right on time. So, you throw those things. So I have these, have ideas. I'll put them down. And for the most part, I'll go through them. If there's something that I think there might be a question about, I'll run it by somebody just to make sure that they're good with it. Even with, and especially like on 3-point calls, I will, I'll research and see, does a player have a nickname? If they've got multiple nicknames, is there one that they like better than the other? I remember when I was in Minnesota, Anthony Edwards, when Anthony Edwards was first drafted, I had heard a couple of different nicknames. Wasn't quite sure what he would like because I had heard some things. So during shoot around before a game, I asked him, I was like, Ant, I was like, what would you prefer on your 3-point call? Would you just prefer Ant for 3, Ant-Man? You know what? And he was like, no, I really don't like Ant-Man. So yeah, Ant for 3, that's fine. And I rolled with it. So, I'll have a couple of interactions with players to see what they like. And, I realized when I was in Minnesota that they actually pay attention to that. I didn't think they did. I thought, okay, they're locked in on their game and whatever. But no, they do pay attention to us and to what we say. So I want to make sure that they enjoy it as well, because I know that if I were in that position, I would get hyped, hearing my name and hearing it done a certain way. So if I do it and they decide, somebody says, hey, can you say this instead? I'm like, hey, sure, no problem.
Well, Shawn, I've been trying to get Tidjane Salane's nickname of Le Tigre to catch on for the Tiger, for the Eye of the Tiger, which is his favorite song.
Okay.
So you have to tell me what he thinks of Le Tigre, because it kind of suits his play style. He's fierce, he's ferocious. That we're relying on you now. You can find out that one for us.
I will find that out, and if he's good with it, you might hear a Le Tigre for 3. You never know.
If we could hear that, that would make my year.
Well, I tell you what, we'll test it out right here and see what people think about it. Le Tigre for 3.
I think it works.
Let's see.
Yeah, I close my eyes. I can picture it.
Have the fans tell you.
I can see it happening.
Absolutely. Looking at the roster, Shawn, I talked about Salone there. Are there any other names on here which you think are kind of particularly fun or difficult to kind of like work with for you?
I will tell you one that I that I think I'm going to have fun with, and it's a little bit nostalgic for me. And it's Lelo Ball. And the reason why is because the first PA announcing job that I ever had, I volunteered at a high school in suburban Maryland, at Rockville High School. As a matter of fact, that's where I met my best friend, he was the girls basketball coach there. Shout out to Curtis Cross, by the way. All right. So, so it's my first team, and there was a player on that team, Brian Ball. And whenever he came down, hit a big shot, hit a big 3-pointer, Brian Ball for 3. And so when I saw that, I was coming to Charlotte and saw LaMelo Ball, I was like, that brings me back. So I'm gonna have some fun with that one.
Nice.
No,
I was always wondering.
You're gonna get a lot of opportunities as well with LaMelo. I think this year you're gonna get a lot of opportunities to do that one.
Well, hey, I hope I get a lot of opportunities with a lot of them. I hope we can fill it up, score a lot of points, and because I'm looking forward to announcing everybody's name. I'm looking forward to announcing some playoff victories, and then, hey, NBA championship. That's the goal. My goal is to be introduced by Mike Breen. Let's go to the public address announcer, Shawn Parker, for game 1 of the NBA Finals and have it right here in Charlotte and have us coming home with the Larry O'Brien. That's what I want.
No joke. I got chills thinking about that. Like not even.
You should. That is chill worthy.
I'm here for it. I'm so here for it, man. This is the last one for me. Do you have a version of what you did in Minnesota of It's Time to Hear You Howl? Do you have a Charlotte version ready to go? Can we hear it?
I do. Absolutely. Spectrum Center, it's time to get the hive buzzing for your Charlotte Hornets.
Love it. The chills are back again. They're back again.
I just wish I'd be able to do that with my voice. I'm one of those people, when I hear my own voice on a podcast or on a phone call, I'm like, who is that guy? Like, this is complete imposter syndrome. I absolutely hate the sound of my own voice.
Hey, I have to give credit to, my genes, my late father, John Parker, God rest his soul. He had that voice too. He could sing, and he if he were around, he could do voiceovers. He just had that rich, soothing voice. So I got some of that from him. I think I got a little more volume than he did, but in this industry, it suits me well, and I'm just very grateful. I'm very grateful for where I am right now, and grateful to be here with you guys. Grateful to be in Charlotte. I understand that this is a small fraternity that I'm in, and to be a professional PA announcer, and I have a lot of respect for it. And I'm very appreciative of it. So it's something that I absolutely do not take for granted.
Yeah. Well, Shawn, you've been very generous with your time. The last request we have today is, as I mentioned to you again just before we started, Big Pat has been, when I started this podcast back in 2019, the very first thing I said, wouldn't it be cool to get Big Pat to do the intro? And I thought, wouldn't it be cool on this episode to have Shawn Parker do our intro for this podcast episode? So we would be thrilled if you could help us out for this episode to give us a little taste and a little intro for the podcast.
I would be honored to. All right, ready?
Fire away.
All right. This is Shawn Parker, the voice of the Charlotte Hornets, and you are listening to Inside the Hive on the Charlotte Hornets on SI Podcast. Your hosts are James Plowright and Sam Dracula.
There we go. And I feel like I'm running out on the court right now, having my moment. That's close as I'm ever going to get, that's for sure. Wow, Shawn, thank you so much. That is absolutely incredible.
It was
thank you so much for your time. And look, enjoy opening night. If by time people listen to this, it will have happened. But Yeah, I hope you're able to enjoy it. Best of luck for the rest of the season. Best of luck with the move. You've only been there in the city for 9 days, you said. I hope you're enjoying everything Charlotte has to offer.
Hey, so far so good. Y'all have some phenomenal food down here, just so you know. My wife and I have absolutely loved just about everything that we have eaten. And that's outside of the Bojangles. Because you can spit and hit a Bojangles around here. So I had some this morning. So
breakfast all day at Bojangles.
All day long.
Love it.
All right, well, Shawn, thank you for your time. Best of luck.
Thank you so
and
much.
We will hopefully catch you up again later in the season.
That's right, everybody. Hive mentality.